All right, I think this is the spot. So, what are we doing here? We are in about in the middle of the most in the middle of nowhere you can possibly be. We're doing some Astro tonight. I don't really know what's gonna happen because it was supposed to be completely clear and now it's not clear. Of course, I mean, how many times do I complain that there are no clouds and I want clouds? And then the one time that I want clouds, the one time that I don't want clouds, I get clouds. Anyway, so we were near the Cosmic Campground. It's a designated dark sky, international dark sky area. The darkest skies in the entire country are out here, but there was a lot of people over there. So we came out to some BLM that's near there, but not there. And there's nobody out here, and that makes me very happy. I'm gonna get the car set up and we're gonna have dinner first. And then I will walk you guys through some plans. We've got a sky tracker, we've got a telescope, we've got, what do we have, like 6 cameras between the two of us? We've got 6 cameras, we got a phone, we got a lot of stuff to shoot some stars in the face tonight. So let's get ready for some dinner and see what happens with the sunset. The landscape photographer in me is excited about the sunset. The astrophotographer in me is not stoked. We're having some competing issues, but I'm gonna get a time lapse going while we get dinner up, and I will see you in a second after I am full and happy and it's tea time. All right, dinner. It's not the fanciest thing in the world, but it's delicious. Everything tastes better outdoors when you're cooking in the middle of nowhere. So while we're having dinner, we have noticed that one, don't jinx this either. I'm telling you right now, don't jinx this. One, the wind has died down, which for giant telescopes is a plus. There's a bug, there's always one bug in my face. Two, the clouds are potentially burning off in our favor. We have some low horizontal clouds. Milky Way is going to be up there at 3 in the morning. Not sure if I'm going to shoot that. I'm going to be focusing on the star tracker. So we have the Star Adventurer Pro, yeah, the Pro 2i package, yeah. The Pro, God, bug, beat it, get out of here. The Pro 2i package with a counterweight setup. I'm gonna get that setup going up here pretty soon as I actually eat. And what I'm hoping for is Orion, what did we say, Orion 229 degrees-ish, and what do we say, 30 something altitude. So basically right there is where Orion's gonna be. What I want to do is I want 85 millimeter, I want my f2, 85 f2, nice and wide, all of Orion. We're not gonna be doing a nebula. This is the nebula shot that I shot with my telescope before. We're not gonna be doing that. I'm gonna be optimistic, cautiously optimistic for fitting the Witch Head Nebula in there too. It's really faint. It's not an emission nebula, it's a reflection nebula, so that's gonna be hard. But we're gonna shoot for that. There's a lot of nebulae in Orion and around Orion, and I wanna kinda get all of that with the 85 and make it look super awesome. So, all right, enough talking. My dinner's getting cold. I'm gonna eat, and then we're gonna get set up, and I will show you guys what I'm doing. Okay, so after we've had a cornucopia of problems, copious amount, cornucopia. Yeah, copious is Latin. Good word. After we've had a copious amount of problems, we've got everything set up. We've got the star tracker polar aligned and repolar aligned, and we've got the 85 with the R6 on here. I don't know if you can see that right now, but I'm doing a timer. It's almost done. I'm doing a 2-minute exposure to see if there's any star trails, and there are not. So that's the beauty of why we want the star tracker with something so light and wide as an 85. 85 is really wide for Astro stuff, but because I'm trying to fit a whole entire constellation in and get multiple nebulae in the shot, the 85 is going to work really well. So we're at f2, ISO 1600, and now we're going to go for 5-minute exposure time. Oh, and we're at f4. Oh, I'm at f4. Holy crap. All right, so the first one's going to be at f4. The next ones are going to be at f2. So I'm going to get this set up, and I will let you know what settings I end up going with for the stack. I want 30 minutes at least, I want 35 minutes at least on Orion. And that's going to give me the best result for stacking. So however many shots it takes me, whether it's a 2-minute shot or 5-minute shot, I want a total exposure time of 30 minutes. So I'm going to finish up here, tighten things down, and then I'm going to start, and then I got to turn off all the lights because I'm blind and my cameras are blind and everyone else around me is blind. So that bug is not blind though, he just went right up my nose. So we're going to finish up shooting, and then I will see you in a second in the studio, and then we'll go over a little bit of how I'm going to stack and process these, and I'll talk about a few more settings. Alright, so it's a few days later since after I shot all the Astro stuff. I got super busy with some family stuff over the past few days, and I wasn't able to film what I wanted to, and I wasn't able to film like a whole editing breakdown of what I did. So let's jump into the computer and I will show you. I'm just going to go over my PSD file for the main image with you guys and just kind of give you a little breakdown of how I edited the image, but this isn't going to be an editing tutorial at all. So let's take a look and see what we did. Oh, well, here's the first image that I took. I was just messing around. This wasn't with a star tracker or anything. This was just by itself. I think this was the R5 with the 16mm. And we've got Orion looking over my Subaru, just chilling. Nothing fancy, just a fun little quick Astro shot. Okay, so you can see when I started doing the test shots and dialing in things like white balance and exposure, composition. And then here is the time lapse that I started. So you obviously can't tell that it's a time lapse because it's on a tracker, so you can't see anything moving, but that's just to get enough images that I needed. Oh, I'm gonna open up a couple of things that I wanna show you guys real quick. Okay, so here, the first thing I used was Deep Sky Stacker, and that's a different program. And that's just the program that I use to stack, and that does a lot of things. Again, I'm not gonna go into a tutorial about that right now, but it does a much better job than Photoshop for stacking. So that's what I used, and then this is the raw TIFF file that we get from that. And so this is what we're starting out, and you can see the Orion Nebula here. You can see very, very super faint flame nebula there, and you can't even see the witch head at all, really. But let's look at this real quick. So here is the image that I started tweaking. Here's all the stuff I did. So here's the basic image, and then we're starting with some stretching, and you'll notice that as we're stretching, we're seeing this bright spot in the middle, and everything that we do makes that worse. Now you can see it really badly there. So it doesn't matter what we do, this bright spot is here, and that's horrible, and that's due to the lens. So this is why we take flats. And flats to me, and especially in this case, are much more important to darks. I didn't take any darks. I just took flats. But that's why we take flats. That's what flats are there for. They're there to fix those issues that are caused by our lenses. So now you can see, we come over here, and this is the final image, and you can see that that is not there anymore. So let me turn off all of this stuff. Okay, so here's the base image, and that looks like a lot of stuff. Let me pull this up a little bit. So the first thing we always do in Astro is we start with stretching. So you can see that we're trying to pull detail out in the shadows and the darks, and that's kind of like we're just pulling that detail out, and it's all, you can see here if we look at the histograms. So all of our data is kind of crushed in these areas. And we want to, for one, we want to align these, the color channels. And for two, we want to bring these out so that they're a more broad spectrum, so that the data has room to breathe a little bit. So every time we stretch, we're pulling this data out. But as we stretch, things get wonky and the colors get more separated and all of that. So that's where we start bringing them back in and lining them up for a more manual color balancing. So, and then the next thing that, on this one here, I did some raw adjustments, and it's pretty vague, but if you just open up Camera Raw, and it's things like dehaze and a few just minor global tweaks there. And then we have a star reduction that I did manually. So there's plugins that you can buy for this, but I never have, so I just do it manually. The plugins probably do a better job than I do. So now we're getting into some curves adjustments, and if you'll look, let's look down here. This area right here is what we're going to keep our eye on. So you can just ever so slightly, you can see that detail in there, and the fact that you can see it in there ever so slightly. This is the Witch Head Nebula, and this is one that I really wanted. So we're going to try to, through a series of curves adjustments, to bring that out. And I did a little bit. So that's where I grouped that into the Witch Head, and there is the Witch Head Nebula. Now, if I would have done more exposures and had more exposure time on the target, then this wouldn't have been so crappy. It would have been a little bit better, but the Witch Head Nebula is extremely faint, so it's a reflective nebula, and it doesn't emit its own light, so it's really hard to see anyways. But basically I just needed more time on it, and I felt like that was about as much as I could pull out and keep it still looking semi-natural. So now we're just looking at a few more adjustments here and cleaning up. This is another star reducer. So after I did the first star reduction and then I pushed and pulled some more, it kind of undid a little bit of that, so I redid it. And then we're looking at a couple of very minute things for dodging and burning. But then we have this heal layer, which is pretty big. I took out a lot of artifacts. I took out a lot of noise, stuff like that that didn't get pulled out, or that got re-exaggerated after I started pushing and pulling. So then we have some more contrast with curves, and then finally one last star reducer. All right, so that is basically all I did to this image. I didn't want to go too crazy on the edit because a lot of things were weird that night. So if you'll notice how the stars are really large and really effusive, really glowy, really ethereal, that was not my intention. That was not something that I did in the edit. As you could see from the raws, that was from a very high altitude cloud layer that was making it hazy, and that was diffusing, naturally diffusing the starlight from the long exposures. So it's kind of cool. I actually kind of like it, but it does give a different look, and it does put limits onto how much I can push the edit and how far I can stretch, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's why I kind of stopped there. You know, you can see if we look here, like look at Orion's nebula, you know, that I don't like what it did out here. I don't like that light, that glowy bit around the outside of the nebula as much. And then we can see here, if we zoom in a lot, we can see the flame nebula here is just really blown out by this guy. And then we can see the Horsehead here. The Horsehead nebula is starting to come out, but again, it's really blocked by that glowy, ethereal, effusive, hazy stuff. But then we've got the Witch Head, which is in this dark area anyways, and that's looking as good as I could get it. The Witch Head, like I said, I just can't emphasize how difficult of a target that is, especially for me. You'll also notice right here, this area, you can just barely start to see this bit of reddish maroon showing up, and that is part of Barnard's loop, which is what I really wanted to capture too. But I'm doing this on a regular camera, and I don't have an H-alpha mod, so you need something that can pull out the H3, the H-alpha filters will pull out the reds that these sensors can't, without modifications, can't capture. So it would have shown up a little bit more. I could have got more, again, with more time on the target. And that's, in Astro, that's always the biggest thing is, you know, we can do these things on regular cameras with regular lenses like I'm doing, but the more time you can get on your target, the better, you know. And I got a total of 35 minutes on this image, and that's just not enough to pull out the data that you see in well, better images. So I'm going to keep trying though, but the beauty of this whole setup is that I can add to this data over the next few nights, even over months, over years, whatever, is that you can always save your data and you can always add to it. You just have to, in my case, I just have to make sure that I'm using the same camera and the same lens. That way I can get, you know, roughly the same stack. But I will hopefully add to this data, and I'm going to start some new data because I do have something in my head that's a different image than this, even though I like it. You know, it's certainly not a portfolio image, but again, that's, you know, that's not why I do photography. I had a blast being out there, and I'm going to keep going out there as the nights get clearer. Unfortunately, Orion is setting, so we're going to be losing Orion here pretty soon until fall. But that also means that the Milky Way is coming up, and I've got a lot of good targets in the Milky Way, and I've got some other stuff. So here's this guy. This is what I was using. This is the Skywatcher Star Adventurer 2i Pro package, and that's what I shot with out there. That was my friends who came out there with me, and then afterwards we ended up trading, and I gave him one of my telescopes, and then he gave me that star tracker. So it was a pretty even trade, and it just kind of works out better. He's got bigger equipment, I've got lighter equipment, so it just works out really well. So I'm going to be using the star tracker a lot more coming up. So if you guys have any questions about anything you want to see with the star tracker, or any kind of editing tutorials that you want to know about concerning how I'm doing this, I'm certainly not a proficient editor in Astro images, so I'm still learning. That's something that I don't do. Like, I know how to do it, I just don't do editing my Astro images like an astrophotographer would. I edit them from a different perspective. So I have weird techniques that people who know what they're doing might be like, why did you do that? But if you guys have any questions about anything that I'm doing personally, let me know in the comments below and I will definitely answer them. If you are still here and you enjoyed this video, huge thanks to you. I really appreciate you sticking around, and I will have a lot more Astro content coming up over the next few months. So hit that like button for me if you enjoyed this video. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
How to keep the human.